Hi, welcome to part 2 of the first class in MCMC 705 for 2024. The first video dealt with the introduction to the class, where I went into a very brief overview of what it is we are headed to do this term. And this segment of the class, I'm going to go over what the course outline and expectations are. So actually, I'm going to open the course outline. So this course outline is available on eCentennial right now. You can download that in the introductory section. So you can read through this. I think the main part that I wanted to address today is we went over the weekly topics, is the assignments. So the evaluation and assignment breakdown, etc., is here on the screen. And so I will go through each of these assignments and go through what the expectations are. I will share the expectations, and the whole assignment everything is already on. Sorry, it's been a very long day. Is already on eCentennial along with the rubrics. But I will break them down one by one. I think the first one that we will talk about, of course, is the very first assignment. But I will go through everything just very briefly. The first assignment is a video introduction of yourself, and that's due on September 14th. And then the instructions are all already on eCentennial, as well as I will go into in a few minutes. Then there's group presentation. Those dates are September 27th and the 4th and the 11th of October. That there's going to be some flexibility with that, but that's what we're aiming for, to start as early as the 27th, to have all of them complete by the 11th of October. Next, there's an acquisitions or loans assignment, and that is because those assignments are so great, I couldn't pick one. And you will get your choice of those. Right now, I've got that down for November 16th, but there will be some opportunity if you want to push that out a week. That'll be fine. But we need to decide that the first week in person. Let's decide that, and I will update this document. There'll be an online open book test on November 30th, and that's worth 25% of your grade. It's about between 30 and 40 questions. I don't exactly remember, and it varies every year as well. And that is an open book test, and it supports the adage that it's not knowing the answers, it's knowing where to find the answers. So this is one that's going to encourage you to have good note keeping and organization, and to make sure that you fill in any gaps on any classes that you miss. So that's November 30th. You'll have 5 days to write that. So from the date that, I'll go into this in a minute, but anyway, you'll have some time to write that. And then the final paper is the critical issues in collections management, and that'll be due on the last day of class. And so please note, this is a Friday. All the other assignments, unless they're in class, such as the presentation, are due on Saturdays. I have included here a lateness penalty, and this is one that we agreed to as a faculty in previous years. It looks pretty harsh, and academic lateness, just like being late for things in work, you can't just hand things in late, you can't show up late, you can't do all of those things. So part of it is to train you to work in the field. That said, life happens, and I know that there are things that happen. So as long as you notify me well in advance of the assigned deadline, we can always work with mitigating those late penalties. The thing is, when you hand in an assignment late, you're just kicking everything down the road. So again, we really encourage you to get things in on time, and I will try to work with the other professors just to make sure that the assignments are spaced out fairly equally. So if you're finding that you've got a bunch of things that are due all on at the same time, just let me know, and we can make plans to change those. Your first assignment is due on September 14th, and this is your opportunity to introduce yourself to me. So in the purpose of this assignment, I say to introduce yourself to the class and the instructor. These videos that you submit are not going to be public unless you want them to. They will not be shared unless you share them. So, so I just want to make that absolutely clear right off the beginning, right at the beginning. Now, this is an assignment that I introduced during COVID when we were all working from home and learning from home. But it's one that I kept up with because I found that I learned an awful lot about my students. And for one, it helped me put faces to names. It helped me understand what your background is. Once I know a little bit more about you, if I hear of an interesting seminar that's coming up, or when it comes to internship or placement opportunities, this will really help me tailor some of that teaching towards you. It's a big class, so it might be hard to get down to that level of tailoring that I've done in the past, but this is just really your opportunity to introduce yourself to me. But it's not just a laundry list of who you are. What I want you to do is to, well, as I say here, but in presenting ourselves, where we come from, what our interests are, we have the opportunity to reflect and uncover the subjectivity that we bring to museum work and explore how that bias might impact the choices we make and the objects we curate, the stories we tell, the audiences we court. So I want you to meet out on what some of those biases are that you bring to the field. And bias always has a negative connotation. I don't mean that. It's just the lens through which you're coming. And if you are coming with a very specific lens, that is a-okay. There's no judgment here at all. This is more about self-reflection. And I want you to just be aware of that. And this is kind of your introduction to that in the museum world. So if I were to say to you, museums aren't neutral, museum objects are not neutral, you might say, well, no, objects don't lie. Objects always tell the truth. But it's the spin that we put on things. It's the context in which we place those objects. So, so I want you to just sort of bear that in mind as you're going through your introduction and introducing yourself to me. This video is going to be 3 to 5 minutes. It doesn't have to be super fancy with all the bells and whistles and lights and external audio sources and anything like that. You can just shoot it with your phone. That's fine. You can use your webcam, which is exactly what I'm doing now. Or you can do something a little more creative. Oh, I didn't open the rubric. So I'll show you the rubric. And so the rubric is essentially everybody passes because it's your own story. You cannot fail your own story. The content or reflection or the amount of analysis, inward reflection that you put on this is worth 3 out of 10. Location is worth 1 out of 10. And I say that, so if you go somewhere, if you take your cell phone and you just sit, I had one student do it from the TTC, and then she explained why she did it from the streetcar. I had one student that just sat out front of the ROM. I personally did mine in a cemetery. I had one student who was interested in fashion, sat in her walk-in closet and did it. One person sat in front of his collection of, little collectible toys. So toys, that sounds very, anyway, his collection of little figures. So, if you sit in front of your favorite piece of art and a student sat in front of her musical instruments. So just something, just give it a little bit of perspective. You don't have to go through a gallery and do a montage, anything like that. So here, and I've also added 0.5% for edits and 0.5% for like effects and music and titles. So if you don't need to do any of that, if you can't do any of that, don't worry, you're still eligible for 9 out of 10. But I did put that in there. A lot of students like to organize their thoughts in a certain way, so they've put in titles or they've added music to just sort of add ambience. You do not have to do that. That's just the difference between a 9 out of 10 and a 10 out of 10. So that is how the rubric works. So I'm just going to flip back here. So just going back to the format. So you can just do this with your webcam, or you can do something more creative. Back to the rubric, just since we're here. So here I talk about what reflection looks like. So it's personal reflection. It's that you demonstrate that you have a lens that you're bringing. You know, you have this worldview and you're bringing that with you. That goes with you everywhere you are. It's who you are. It's nothing negative. So again, bias and, you know, the lens through which we view things, these things have connotations, and I don't mean them to. I just want you to have that awareness. And so I'd like you to consider areas, identify areas for growth or exploration, personal journey that inspired you into taking this program. I've done one of these videos. It's a little bit different than what how I've adjusted the assignment. Now, I think I did mine 3 years ago. So mine's a little bit different. Mine doesn't actually include a lot of reflection. But you'll be able to see something of what I'm talking about, and you'll get to learn a little bit about me. So here I talk about location. It includes somewhere special or meaningful, such as a museum, a gallery, site of significance, your personal collection, your favorite art piece, and then just a short explanation of why you chose that place. And then just any edits or location splices, photo overlays, that kind of thing. And then the effects is that's one step beyond just doing music titles and transitions. So those last two are just worth a little bit. If you are camera shy, I had one student who did not want to put herself on video, and she was a photographer. So she always operates behind the camera, not in front of it. She just did a photo stream of her images as she talked, and then the very last image was a picture of her. Because again, this is also so I can learn your faces and your names. So if you are camera shy, or for whatever other reason you object to having your image recorded, just if you could just somehow include something so I could put a face to your name. So that is how the rubric is determined. How you submit this assignment, and this is I want you to upload it. You can either upload it to YouTube and just share the link with me. Now, if you make it unlisted, not private, unlisted, that way only people with the link can see it. So if you make it private, you have to, I don't even know how that works, but you have to invite people. So please don't do that, because I've had to track students down. You will actually lose a little bit of marks if you don't follow these instructions. So unlisted, so that only you can see it and those who you send the link to can see it. eCentennial won't allow you to submit a link as your assignment. So just make it a Word document or a text document or something just with that YouTube link. Please don't send it to me by email. The other opportunity, or the other way you can submit it, if you don't have a YouTube account or don't want to create one, you can upload it directly to the assignment section of eCentennial. That way you don't need to use any third-party hosts. I haven't personally done that, so I can't talk you through it, but students have done it in the past. And finally, please just do not email the link to me directly. If you do, because the way the grading works, it all goes through eCentennial. So if you haven't submitted something to eCentennial, I can't submit a grade for you. Now, if you're having a hard time, please do email me and let me know that you're having a hard time sending the link, or submit just a Word document to eCentennial that says, I sent you an email, for the link. But if you can send a Word document, then you can put a link in it. Anyway, let's get into the meat and potatoes. What is this content? What is it I'm looking for? In 3 to 5 minutes, I'd like you to introduce yourself to your instructor or your colleagues if you choose. And I want you to put your own spin on this. I want this to be a fun assignment. I've put in some leading questions. You don't have to answer these, but your name would be helpful. Knowing what your academic background is would be helpful. If you have any previous museum or other relevant experience, mention it. I also want to say something here right now. Please don't apologize for not having museum experience. That's why you're here. So if you have some, great. And if you don't, just say what it is you're interested in working in, or if you're just interested in everything. So either experience you've got and where you hope to go. What's your museum origin story? Why did you choose this career path? If you could catalog one object in the world, real or imaginary, what would it be? If you could create an exhibit, what would it be about? If there was a portrait of you hanging in a museum or gallery, what would the label text say about you? Do you collect anything? Do you want to share some of your personal collection? That would be something really interesting. It could be a quirky fact about yourself. And then finally, the reflection aspect of it, which is actually the big section of it. But you can touch on it throughout. But what bias and what lens you approach this museum work. So that's the kind of stuff that I'm interested in seeing. And I've got some further notes here, so don't be if you're camera shy, that's fine, just be creative. And again, just a reminder, this will not be shared unless you choose to share it. So that is the kind of stuff that I'm looking for. Again, I want it to be fun. I want this class to be fun for you guys. I think you learn in an environment that's fun. It does make it a lot easier to get points across. You'll see throughout these assignments that they're geared towards real life, like real museum life. And I will explain as we go along what that looks like, how that translates into these assignments. So this is the first assignment, and this is the video introduction that is due on September 14th, I believe it was. The second assignment is a group presentation. So as I said, every assignment is rooted in real museum work. And you're probably all sitting there groaning, saying, oh, group assignments. I hate working on group assignments. But the reality is most museum work is somehow group related. Like right now, I'm here in Chicago with a team of 3 other people, and we're working on an exhibition that was put together by a team of probably 30 people. So group work is real. So I just wanted to state that for you. And that's part of the purpose of this. Now, I've put a bit of a spin on it. I've come up with what I think are really cool topics. And you've got an opportunity that if you can agree as a group on an alternate topic, please do let me know. And as long as you can find the resources, I'll be okay with it. So this assignment is worth 25% of your final grade. As I said before, we'll do the presentations in class over 3 weeks. Now, I want you to feel comfortable to make your presentations in any format you're comfortable with. If you are doing something that requires you to do video footage at a site or at an arboretum or an aquarium or something, that's great. You can put together a video montage or some sort of video that you can share with the class at the allotted time. If you want to make it a podcast or something along those lines, set it up like something like that, that's fine as well. If you have other creative ideas, as long as you can agree as a group, that is fine. I'm really, really open to anything. And again, that's museums are always changing and adapting to new technologies and new ways of thinking, and this class will be no different. So wow me with anything creative. There are a series of topics. They're down below, so they're on the assignment sheet that I've already shared with you, and they are available on eCentennial in the discussion section. And you can go in there and sign up for your assignments. So actually, let me go to that right now. And I will show you how to get there. So if you're in eCentennial, now this might look a little different for you. Resources, eCentennial. Now, fun fact, these crates are from the Winnie the Pooh exhibition from the Victoria and Albert Museum. The communication, okay, so first of all, I'll just go through the assessments. The assessments are found, oh, hang on, no, I shouldn't do that. I have to change view as student. Okay, So under the assessment section, the assignments, that's one place that you'll see your assignments. So here they are, the rubric and the assignment, the rubric and the assignments, all the way down. And so that's one place. The other place is under content, and then under content, and then assignments here. So if you click on the assignments on the side, then you can see the different assignments. So now for this assignment, for the presentations, the group presentations, you have to go to communication and discussions. And from here, you choose a topic. So you just find the one you want. So I'll go through all of these in a minute, and then you just click on it and you start a new thread and you just put your name in. It's that simple. So that's all we're going to do for that. Sign up. We are a minimum of 5 students per topic because it's a big group, but a maximum of 7 students per topic. How you divide the work yourselves doesn't matter to me. But part of the rubric for this assignment is group cohesion. So that's going to be hard in some respects because I don't know who's done what. But one of the things I want to know is that your group worked well as a team. It was cohesive, it was integrated, it was self-referential, and that everyone seems to have a role or a responsibility. And when I talk about integrated and self-referential, that means I want to know that each of you knows what the other one is doing, and that you refer to it and you just say, as Peter is going to talk about in a minute, or as Annie is going to talk about soon, or as Mikey mentioned, that kind of thing. It can be that simple, but I really want it to come across as that your group is cohesive and that you know what everyone is doing. I'll get more into the rubric in a minute. So sign up, minimum 5, maximum of 7. I will take other topics as long as you agree as a group. And I also want you to think about presentation dates early on. So as soon as your group is formed, start thinking if you want to present on the 26th, the 4th, or the 11th. So we can just secure those spots for you. So the format, okay, so it's a group presentation, a maximum of 15 minutes for the presentation with 5 minutes for questions. You don't have to do a visual presentation like a PowerPoint, but it is encouraged. It will help make your point. So, and that's also like a great thing that you can do for sharing your sources, as well as it. Well, frankly, it gives someone a job to create that presentation if that's how you're going to go. Oh yeah, and so also regarding cohesion, if you are going to do a PowerPoint presentation, which again, I encourage you to do, just this is going to sound silly, but what will encourage or what will show cohesion is that the formatting is all the same, and that the font and the colors in the background, and that it kind of comes off as more polished. So that is part of the group section in the rubric, and it is something. So just imagine that you're trying to pitch an exhibition or to convince your board to allow you to buy $1 million artifact. You're going to want to be as polished as possible. Okay, so a 15-minute presentation. Like I said, it can be a podcast, it can be a video, it can be anything that works for your particular project or your particular topic. In addition to the presentation component, there's a deliverable, and it is a 1-page briefing note. Now, with a separate page of references. So just at the end of your presentation, you will have works that you need to cite. So this briefing note, just the additional page or however many pages you need to cite your references, include that on the briefing note. Now, these briefing notes are going to be shared with your colleagues, and every student will. It's a great way for you guys to begin a portfolio on a whole diverse range of topics. And this 1-page briefing note is a summary of what you did And I think of it as something, and again, this is something that we do in the museum world, where you have to give your director or, someone, the head of your board or whoever, a one-page briefing note that they can take with them when they're talking to the media or whoever it is they're talking to, and it'll be organized in such a way that they can find the information they need. It's not necessarily a summary of what you do, right down to the detail. It's kind of a bigger overview. So think of this as something where you've worked on something for, the hours and hours that you're going to put into this presentation, and then you're giving it to your director, who is going to spend 30 seconds in front of the media and may have questions, may field questions about anything. So that's the point of the briefing note. So that gets submitted. So that is your eCentennial submission for this assignment. You will just create that in a Word document or a PDF document, and you will put that on eCentennial. I also encourage you to share your PowerPoint on eCentennial so that that can be shared with the group as well. And then that makes it, I always find that really much better from a perspective of your audience, because then they're less busy scribbling down notes because they know they're getting the PowerPoint at the end, and they know they're getting the briefing note at the end. So they're going to be more engaged in your conversation and your presentation. And hopefully the only thing they're scribbling down is questions that they want to ask you at the end. So that is the format of the presentation and the deliverable of the briefing note and the PowerPoint presentation. So again, I'm just going to mention that group works are, collaboration is a necessity in every aspect of museum work. And so you determine how you organize that yourself. And a lot of that will depend on what your topic is, how you divide things up. But communication within the group is absolutely critical. So for example, if you choose, let's just find art restitution, the first topic. Find a series of, 5 of you in the group. You each find one piece of art that's been, returned through international channels because it was looted somehow. And there's no introduction, there's no summary. It's just 5 separate pieces of art that were all returned. That's great, that's interesting, but it has to have a beginning and an end and has to sort of flow. So I just want you to think about that when you're coming up with how you divide up your work. So let's dive into the topics. I think these are really cool topics. And most of them, I'm not going to go into much detail in class. So art restitution. So this is a leading, in each of these topics, I'm giving you some leading questions. You are not bound by these. So I say identify and explore the legal and ethical apparatus in place internationally and in Canada for the discovery and restitution of Nazi looted art. What are some of the challenges? Provide a Canadian case study if possible. So in this particular case, for example, I had a student who was from Mexico. And in fact, the group, there were someone from Mexico, someone from Colombia. It was just a group of people that didn't have a lot of the sort of that, their heritage wasn't really as impacted by, say, the Nazi era looting, but it was affected by looting. And so they discussed restitution of works that were important to the cultural patrimony of Mexico, Bolivia, Colombia, and these various places. So although I'm giving you Nazi looted art as an example, you are not bound by that. It is the easiest one to find examples for. But if you are passionate about something else, that is fine. You can go for that. Managing digital collections. If you're a bit of a tech nerd, or if you're an artist who works in born digital media, you might be interested in exploring this. Oh, and by the way, when I say nerd, I always mean it with affection. Nerd, geek. Like, I'm a museum geek and I'm a bit of a tech nerd. So anyway, I always mean it with affection, so please don't take any offense. But managing digital collections. So explore the current best practices for acquiring, storing, preserving, and managing digital collections. And then create a model disaster plan to mitigate against the loss of data. And that loss of digital data can be anything from a ransomware attack. It can be a failure of a hard drive, or some other system. It can be hacking through, if you're using cloud services. So it can be a number of different things. Again, it's a big topic, and there's a lot of opportunity to explore a lot of things. And that data that we're talking about can be born digital collections. It can be audio and video related to museum activity. It can be the administrative data related to the business continuity of your museum. So you can take a lot of different approaches with this. Living collection challenges is another topic. So here I said identify different types of living collections, such as zoos, aquaria, and arboreta. So I'm a language nerd, so that would be something like Ripley's Aquarium, or like arboretums, like botanical gardens, and explore some of the particular challenges faced by the registrars or collections managers at those institutions. And one of the things I always think about is during the Winnie the Pooh exhibition that we did. For those of you who don't know, Winnie the Pooh is based on a real bear that was born in Canada, named Winnipeg, Winnie for short. And Winnie was actually a female bear. And she was the mascot of a certain regiment from, I want to say Manitoba. And when they went over to England, the troop was deployed, or the regiment was deployed, and they deposited Winnie in the London Zoo for safekeeping until the regiment came back from World War I. And that's where A.A. Milne met Winnie, and Christopher Robin, and the whole Winnie the Pooh story began. And part of that exhibition was Winnie's death certificate. And it's interesting to think that when we think of museum collections, when they're living collections, birth and death are one of the ways that we acquire, and we, I hate to say dispose, or we deaccession. How about we accession or we deaccession collections? So it's really interesting to think about that, whether it's a tree or a fish or a bear. So I think those are some interesting things to consider. Disease is another thing that is somewhat rampant, or not rampant, but will affect that kind of collection more than it would affect, say, a collection at the ROM. So the next topic I have is living history museums, different than living collections. So living history museums identify different types of living history museums and explore some of the particular challenges faced by registrars and collections managers at those institutions. So those kind of living history museums are places like Fort York or Black Creek Pioneer Village, where there's often costumed interpretation, and there's often first-person interpretation. So people walk through historic houses or rebuilt farms, or like farm villages, like pioneer villages, like Black Creek Pioneer Village. There's often programming that's very hands-on. There's a lot of different, it's often people's first introductions to museums. Every kid remembers going to the Pioneer Village, or whatever, kind of museum. In Toronto, there's Mackenzie House, and they have a printing press, like that kind of thing. So there's different kinds of living history museums. So so take a look at what those are and what some of those unique challenges are for each of those kinds of museums. Value. So when I talk about value, I'm discussing monetary value. So discuss how and by whom museum collections are evaluated for monetary purposes. And for what reasons would a collection be assigned a monetary value? Which agency governs the rules for charitable tax receipts to museums? And briefly describe what those rules are. So that is kind of two prongs. So, and the question kind of gives away part of the answer. So part of the reason we assign values and we say that this glass is worth $3 is because I want a tax receipt if I give that to your museum. So someone has to give this a value of $3, mostly because it's still available at IKEA for that. But so that could be one of the reasons you assign a value. Insurance purposes is another reason. So you can take this this value and you can look at it from a collections building perspective. So museums build collections by being able to offer charitable tax receipts. So we can't buy an object, but we can give you a tax receipt for it. So you can explore a couple of different things. You can explore just the monetary purposes for insurance and that kind of thing. So like right now, the exhibition I'm working on, we had a tank full of lampreys, like live lampreys. If one of those lampreys died, what is it worth? How much is that jar of mosquitoes worth? These are just really interesting questions. And you might say, well, who cares? It's a jar of mosquitoes. You don't need to have a value. But as soon as you want to send that across an international border, you tell customs it doesn't have a value. So anyway, I talked a lot about that one. It's kind of it's one of the things I do all the time at work. It's kind of part of my job. Access. Let's look at access. Discuss how the public, for whom the museums hold their collections, have access to collections. That's not a very good sentence. So how do museums allow access to collections to the public? What are the various forms that that access takes? Which are the easiest? Which provide the most challenges? And how does accessibility and equity impact access strategies? So when we talk about access, that can be from an accessibility and equity lens. It can also be from an intellectual perspective. So this access has been addressed in a number of different ways, and I am open to any of them. If you're not sure, if you really want to go out on a limb and do something crazy, not just with this topic, but with any of them, feel free to reach out to me. But generally, I love creative thinking. So just go for it as long as it's related to the topic of museums. But again, if it's really out there, just let me know in advance. So access. So sustainability. Explore the current research on sustainability practices in collections management. Provide contemporary case studies of institutions excelling at reducing their carbon footprint while providing an exceptional level of collections care. So this is an interesting one, and sustainability is, of course, becoming increasingly important. And I think that you might be able to find some really recent documents on this. And I know that a number of museums, ROM included, are looking at doing changing practices to become more sustainable. In fact, we have a curator of climate change now, and he's informing, a lot of what we do and sort of guiding us in a direction to help improve sustainability. One of the things, the field museum that I've been working at this week is a LEED certified building. So you can look up what that means. I honestly can't remember what LEED stands for, but it's about sustainability and that kind of thing. So take a look at that if that's a topic that you're interested in. Another interesting topic is intangible cultural heritage. So you can discuss the role of intangible heritage in the context of the larger cultural heritage umbrella. So what is it? Who determines what it is, and how is it documented? And intangible cultural heritage is defined by UNESCO. Canada is not signatory yet to the UNESCO Convention on Intangible Cultural Heritage, but I still think it's something. I think it's somewhere that we're going as a nation. And so investigate that. You can look at intangible cultural heritage as it exists, and then in places like Canada where it doesn't, it's not officially recognized yet, but what are some of those practices that might be considered intangible cultural heritage, from making maple syrup to, playing hockey to, some specific Indigenous or Inuit or, other sort of traditions, that kind of thing. So it's a really interesting topic, and it's one that I always, every year, students come up with different things, and I learned so much from that one. Human remains. This one is something that is interesting because it's changing. I've seen it change just in my career as well, since I started. I'd like you to look at that evolution of thinking on the collection and presentation of human remains. What's the general response from Canadian institutions? And I'd also like you to consider that, is it ever okay to display human remains? Is there an age limit? Is there a cutoff? Is it only dead cultures have their dead remains displayed. So I've used here mummies, or mummies an example. So there was a study done in the UK a number of years ago that looked at human remains in museums, and generally the public was against it. Oh, except mummies. Of course, that's okay. So I think it's this interesting thing. I want to know if that's changing as well. Is our attitude towards mummies hardening a little bit? So that's something to take a look at. Repatriation. So this is different than art restitution. So here we're looking at, well, here, I'll just read the question. Identify and explore the legal and ethical apparatus for the discovery and repatriation of cultural patrimony from Canadian First Peoples. Compare the framework between Canada and the USA. So this is looking mainly at Indigenous repatriation, not things that were stolen or looted. There's differences between Canada and the US. The United States has, well, I'm not going to give you any spoilers. Anyway, the United States does have federal legislation, whereas Canada doesn't. So that is something that is interesting to look at. And yeah, and I think the final thing is risk management. So outline potential risks to museum collections and look at mitigation strategies. So this risk management, this is another one of those great topics that can go a number of different ways. You can look at a variety of risks, from technological risks, ransomware and hacking, to natural disasters, to health emergencies, to theft, to fire, flood, terrorism. There's no shortage of risks. So what are those potential risks, and how can museums try to protect themselves against these? So this is the group seminar assignment, and the rubric for this, it's already posted on eCentennial. But basically, I'm just looking that your delivery is clear and confident and effective. And don't worry if you are shy and you speak quickly, or if you are nervous. I can usually tell that. It's not going to be held against you that you're nervous, but just do your best to be clear and confident. And this will not be the first time in your career you have to stand up in front of a group of your peers. So I always find that the best thing you can do is just own it. If you know what you're talking about, you've got this. And if you are really, really, really super concerned about public speaking, then in your group, see if you can find a section where you yourself are not the one that's doing all the speaking. Every group has someone who is happy to be the spokesperson. And then people can just sort of interject and jump in and maybe elaborate on a few things. So anyway, you sort that out with your own group. Obviously, the content is important. Again, I don't just want a laundry list of facts. I'm looking for some analysis and interpretation, how it applies to the topic at hand. Ideally, your presentation will have a thesis at the beginning and how that content links back to it. And then again, at the end, a summary kind of wrapping everything up. Would be what I would be looking for in that. Discussion, how you effectively respond to questions. Now, I find in these presentations, sometimes the students come up with, like the audience comes up with all sorts of questions that are well beyond what you've talked about. And so I don't expect you to have all of the answers. And I always think that's a good sign, because it means you've piqued their curiosity. But if you can't answer that, that's fine. Again, if you're confident and you can refer them to your list of notes, or you can offer to look something up for them, or you can give them the jargon they need to look something up themselves, just that kind of thing. Some groups always have a couple of hot questions in their back pocket, just in case there is no discussion. I don't want to not give you your your scale of 1 to 4 because there was no discussion. So have a couple of questions in your back pocket that are going to lead to some interesting discussion with the class. Maybe be a little provocative, or something that's going to get the class talking. Again, it depends on what your topic is. If it's insurance, you're not going to have a provocative question. So I'm just kidding. I love insurance. Your written supporting material includes your briefing note and ideally your PowerPoint or Google Slide or whatever it is that you use. And then finally, how you work as a team. Um, the success of any group project usually depends on how cohesive the team is. So I want you guys to think about that. Okay. Next assignment. Oh dear, we have a few more to go. We've talked a lot. All right. So the next assignment is the acquisitions assignment. So this is where you can do acquisitions or loans. I'm just going to close all of these. Acquisitions, and then the other assignment is loans. And again, these are both available on eCentennial right now. And the due date is tentatively November 16th, but we can push that a week, maybe two, if that's what's best for you guys. So in this, it's a scenario question. You've been asked by your board of directors to create a new museum. So I've given you a few examples of museum types in case you're struggling. And you have complete autonomy to determine the breadth of your museum's collecting policy. So I've given a few collections, a few examples of different kinds of museum collections. Not every museum is the ROM or the AGO. So you can have something very specific. It can be your own private collection. One person did her family had a collection of something. And so she did that, so you can do that. So in this assignment, this is the fun part. Okay, so you get to develop a mission statement for your museum. Now, a mission statement is just a pithy 1 or 2 sentence guiding principle for your a museum. So archive note. I usually this is loans. Hang on a second. Let me go to acquisitions. And here I've got a sample that I've done. So in case you haven't learned this yet, I am a music nerd and I'm a bagpiper. So I created the Bagpipe Museum of Canada. Now, my mission statement is a little bit long and it's it's not very good in some cases. I make it a little silly. So, this is a very deftly crafted statement about how bagpipes are awesome. And everyone from visitors to community to the board has a shared purpose in making the bagpipe the sound that's heard around the world. The values of music. Okay, so this part is something that would be more like a mission statement. The values of music are universal, but none so much as the bagpipe, which is part of the fabric of every community gathering in moments of triumph, anguish, war, and revelry. From the full marching band to the lone piper, the bagpipes have made an impact on society, and it's our goal to share that impact through our collection, programming, and teaching. So that last part is sort of more like a mission statement. So a mission statement is really just a couple of paragraphs, a couple of sentences, sorry. I also want you, okay, so that's worth 10. So the next part is developing a collections policy for your museum as it relates only to acquisitions. So there are a lot of different collections policies available on the web, and I will share a bunch with you on eCentennial. You can draw from those. Please put them into your own words as best you can. I'm happy with you taking concepts from these collections policies, but if you're going to take something from this one and something from this one, that's great. But please try to be consistent. If you're going to use the word object, use the word object. Don't switch to artifact. Don't switch to artifact spelled the British way and then artifact spelled the American way. So just try to really clean all of that up and put it into your own voice. The concepts are fairly universal, and I don't think any museum really creates a policy from scratch. We're always borrowing. But I'll share the kind of thing that I'm looking for. Collections policies can be 40 pages. I don't want 40 pages. I just want a few. It can be written in point form. It'll probably be about a page. So here's my example. So The Bagpipe Museum of Canada is committed to maintaining the highest standards of collections to support our mandate, programming, research, and exhibitions. Bagpipe Museum of Canada will maintain an active acquisitions agenda with an effort to create exciting multisensory exhibitions, support world-class research, introduce new audiences to bagpipes and the role they play in military and civilian society, to develop a relevant and multidisciplinary program, and to garner enough interest to field our own band. Can you imagine that? A museum with a bagpipe band. Whew, my dream. Okay, so that's part of the acquisitions policy. So it's kind of like the big picture. Why are you collecting? The next section is the acquisition scope. So first part is why you're collecting. This part is what you collect. So the Bagpipe Museum of Canada will collect bagpipes, associated accoutrement, uniform, music scores, sound recording, manufacturing equipment related to the production of the instruments or reeds. And then I go on to say bagpipes are universal, and the Bagpipe Museum of Canada will collect from every culture and area, but the primary scope will be the Great Highland Bagpipe and its equipment, and then other bagpipes, such as throughout Great Britain, Europe, and then throughout the rest of the world, where there's a significant piping tradition. And then I'm saying, and it's not out of the realm of possibility that I can look at other instruments that are double reeded, for example. They're reservoir supplied, so they've got a bag, they're woodwinds, or they have say a military tradition. So I've said my scope is, Scottish bagpipes, but other bagpipes are cool, and other bagpipes around the world are cool, and then other things that are related are cool. So I've kind of put it in I've triaged it into, what I will consider taking. Now, let's say we get offered something at the Bagpipe Museum of Canada. The criteria for accepting it is that everything has to be consistent with the policy, so it has to meet that criteria that I've listed above. If someone wanted to offer like a big army tank, because I say here that I'll collect things that are related to the military, for example. Well, other musical instruments that are related to the military. I don't want to have a collection of tanks and guns. So there's always something tangential that you might consider, but this is your acquisitions criteria, has to make it really clear what fits the policy and what doesn't. So you just have to be consistent with the policy. You have to be able to provide a minimum standard of care. So if we were offered a great big CNC machine that would, we can't fit inside our building, but we could put it out on the front lawn. Well, it's a piece of electrical machinery and equipment. Obviously, that's not a good standard of care. So although it fits the collection criteria, it doesn't really fit being able to provide that standard of care. Okay, so the objects that you collect must support the mission and education, exhibition, and research. They must be in reasonably good condition. And again, that condition, oh God, I'm giving you guys all the answers. But that condition, and I'm not going to read my whole policy. I'm losing my voice. I had a cold the other day or the other week. Anyway, the condition is dependent on the object itself. So those of you who've seen my video, I talk about the piece that I want to catalog most in the world, and it's a set of bagpipes that was from World War I that was damaged in the war. Now, you can look at that and say, well, who wants that? That's broken. But in the story of that particular set of bagpipes is really important to the story of that particular set of bagpipes. So although it's broken, I'm collecting it because that story represents something that's really important. So, if you're collecting, if you've got a cat museum and you're collecting a cat that came from ancient Egypt or some archaeological excavation, that's going to be very different than the Hello Kitty merchandise that you get. Does that mean that you don't collect it because it's in from an archaeological context and it's missing its ear? No, so you have to be sensible about the kind of conditions that you put on things. Anyway, so you can read all of this criteria, but anyway, I'll just recap. So it's a mission statement, it's why you're collecting, what you're collecting, what the criteria is, and then what those principles are. Now, this is the way I've set mine up. And the principles are sort of the administrative nitty-gritty. And then it's just who created the policy. So you might find that some of the policies that you found for your own museum are formatted a little bit differently. They have different headings. It might be because you have a different collection type, or it might be you just found a format that you like better, and that's fine. So you're going to create that policy. So you can see from mine's only about a page long. So you're going to collect that, you're going to create that. That's about 30 marks. Then you're going to use your selection criteria to select 10 objects for your museum. And there's something called a significance guide, which I'll share with you, or you can just use your own mission statement to create a justification for why you're collecting things. Every object should have a couple of sentences at least to justify why you're collecting it or why you're not collecting it. That's the other thing. Your 10 objects, you can say these 10 things I've considered, but this one doesn't fit when I test it against my policy, it doesn't fit. And that's a really good judge of how tight your policy is. So I encourage you to reject a couple of objects and then just explain why you're rejecting them. And that's fine. I could consider that giant CNC machine because that's the machine that made the peg pipe that won the last, international solo contest. So it's a really important piece of equipment. But at the end of the day, I just couldn't care for it. So, I think that's great if you test these things against your criteria. And then the final part of this is catalog those 10 pieces that you've just acquired or that you've just looked at. Even if you reject it, please catalog it. So prepare a mini catalog for your 10 items. And then there are certain fields that are core cataloging fields, which we'll get to in class before you have to do this assignment. So, but I've given you some examples there, and then there are some in the textbook as well. So, and I can show you an example of what my catalog worksheet looks like. So this is, I think I've only done, actually, in this particular case, I've only done one. So this is, essentially my catalog worksheet with my questions down the side, or not questions, but my fields down the side that basically describe what it is, what the value is. I have a section on condition. So some things here, I just want to draw your attention. So there's a section that I'm encouraging you to look at the legal requirements. So in this, you'll see that under legal, it says CITES Appendix 1, Loxodonta L. africana, Appendix 2, Dalbergia melanoxean. So forgive my Latin pronunciation, but this is an A answer. So if you want to get yourself an A in this course, or not just in this course, but on this assignment, where there's legal, don't just say permits required. If you know that there's ivory on something, or that if it's made out of diamonds and it has to have a safe diamond certificate, or anything, a firearm, what kind of restrictions there are there, be specific. So under legal, like a B answer on this would just say it needed a CITES permit, but an A answer is a CITES Appendix 1 for the ivory and Appendix 2 for the African blackwood. So not everything has legal. But I'm giving you an example of where a permit is the correct answer. But if you really want to go above, what kind of permit? And again, that doesn't just apply to permits. It can apply under storage and handling. If a correct answer would be, a controlled environment. An A
answer, an A+ answer would be 21 degrees plus or minus 5 with a 50% plus or minus 5 percent RH, maximum 100 lux. You know, and then store individual pieces separately, non-assembled. Like that's an A+ answer, but safe storage with a controlled environment is also acceptable. I hope this isn't confusing you, but I'm giving examples of like what an A+ answer is versus like an A answer. And I think actually that's all in the rubric as well. And then the significance, so description, and then the significance are, this is the kind of thing, this is about the length of significance that would work. It's a couple of sentences about why we would acquire this piece and what it means for our museum. So that's the cataloging section of this. Now, I realize that if you want to include the Mona Lisa in your museum, that's great. You can include whatever you want. It can be anything. You can find it on a website. You can find it in a book. It can be anything. So I realize some of this you might, I don't want to say make up, but you might not be able to know. And so in the case of the Mona Lisa, for example, you could say something along the lines. So first of all, I need to know, you need to show me what you need to know. So you can say something like, you know, for the value of the Mona Lisa, you know, this, you know, the value of this object will require board approval, regardless of whatever you say in your policy, because the Mona Lisa is well beyond that value, I am sure. Need to bring in a third-party appraiser for a monetary evaluation. So you don't have to say it's worth $1 billion. You just need to say that the value will affect your policy because you will have an approval level. So, you know, not, you know, the curator or the collections manager can't say, yeah, we'll take it. It's worth $1 billion. Your board will have a say, right? So you need to indicate that the value is going to have an impact on that, but also you have no idea what it's worth. So who does? You're going to bring in an expert. You're going to talk to other museums. You're going to, you know, there's a variety of different things, different approaches you can take. And so I just need to see where you're going with that. If you don't know what the environment should be, you know, you can say a stable environment. And I will consult, you know, must consult with an organics conservator to determine the optimal environment. Or, you know, in the case of the bagpipes, it's mixed media. So a conservator must be consulted for the optimal environment, you know, something like that. So just because you choose something that you can't know the right answer to, you can still do that over and above. Okay. So I think that is everything with the acquisitions. Yes, that's your 10 items. All right. So I hope this all makes sense. And it should. It's a fun assignment. Everyone who does this has a really fun time. And it is work that I, like me personally, that I do every day. Well, I don't write policy every day, but I'm governed by policy every day. I have a link to the policy on my desktop. So and I have the collections policy pretty much memorized. The second assignment that you can do is the loans assignment. And that is, it's about the same amount of work. So in case you're wondering which one is going to be easier, or which one's going to be faster, if that's your governing, you know, dictating what you're going to choose, don't let that dictate what it's going to choose because they're about the same. So on this, in this assignment, you receive a letter from a museum in Beijing, and they want to borrow 2 objects. And they've given you a list of 5 potential objects. They've already looked at your website and talked to your curators, and they're interested in these 5 objects, but no, they can't afford to borrow them all. And they know that we won't lend them all, whatever reason. They just want 2 and they trust us. So they're letting you pick the 2 objects from the list to send to them. And so you have to prepare the documents and correspondence for this outgoing loan. Okay, so there are 4 deliverables in this task, and there's a short essay. It's not really an essay. I'd rather it have a memo format. Part of the purpose of this assignment is that you, with all the assignments that I've included in the course, there's a lot of different writing styles that you get used to. None of them is an essay. I, in 25 years of museum work, have never written an essay. So when you come to, college and university, you expect you're going to write a lot of essays. Yes, but not in this class. So I'm kind of calling it an essay because it's sort of an essay length, but it's actually in the format of a memo. Anyway, I'm getting ahead of myself. So so you choose 2 objects from Appendix A, which is, I'll show it to you in a second, and you prepare the correspondence and documents that the lender will initiate. So, so you're going to reply to the loan request letter. You're going to create a RACI chart. So that is who is responsible, who's accountable, who's consulted, and who's informed of the internal stakeholders. And again, this is you showing me that you know who you need to talk to. If you're going to lend out a dinosaur skeleton, who needs to know that? Does the curator of paleontology need to know it? Probably. Does the person who arranges your shipping need to know? Does conservation need to know? Yeah. So so that's the kind of thing. Does the head of education need to know? Does marketing and your social media team need to know? So I just need you to think about who needs to know and whether it's just a heads up. Like if you're sending your dinosaur on the move, you're sending your T-Rex out to, wherever, your media team, your social media team could probably have a field day with that. So they don't need to be, you know, consulted, or they don't need to, have any responsibility or anything like that. But a heads up to the social media team would be fun because they could do some fun things with it. If you're taking something off display, notifying your education department, for example, might be something that would be a great heads up because they might use that piece in educational programming. So it's about thinking of all of the stakeholders in the museum and how that is, who might need to know. So again, the more, I don't want to say creative you're going to be, but the more you think outside the box. A lot of students will just really only say, well, conservation needs to know, and the person who does the packing, and the person who does the loan agreement, and the director. And then that's it. So you need to think about, other things. And if you're putting something really out there, you can put a little footnote in why you said the social media people might want to know that, for example. I want you, okay, so section C is the special clauses for the loan agreement. So I will provide you with a template loan agreement, and I would like you, and it's a template loan agreement, but I'm going to delete a few clauses that are, sort of standard. And I'd like you to make sure that the pieces that you are, or the 2 objects that you've selected are protected in that loan agreement really specifically. So you're, like I said, I'm going to give you a Word document of this loan agreement that the ROM uses. It's the ROM loan agreement. Actually, forget that thing about me deleting clauses. I won't delete anything. It's the ROM standard loan agreement. But if there's something specific to your object, I'd like you to put it in, and just put it in, highlight it or color it or something, just so I can easily pick it out. So, so although you're going to be drafting a loan agreement, you're really only going to be doing a few clauses. So, so it's not actually super onerous. Well, you have to come up with the clauses, but there's not a lot of writing involved in that. Like I say, probably just 3 or 4 clauses that are over and above what's already in the loan agreement template. And then this is the final thing, is the memo to the board of directors. And in this, you're going to describe the decisions you had to make and why you made them. And it's so it's maximum of 3 pages. And you will explain the associated legal and policy concerns that you had with sending the objects and what you did to mitigate them. Now, I've just said you can do it as an essay because I've had students sort of panic when they see like a formal memo. There's a lot of templates on the internet that you can use as a memo, but basically you are writing this to your board of directors. So you need to have the appropriate language, the appropriate level of formality. You can't just say, yeah, I talked to Mike and he said, yeah, that's cool, we can send it. That's okay for an email to one of your colleagues. That's not okay for your president or the chair of your board. So it's about just sort of changing your voice and about making something a little more formal. So, and again, that is something that you will do in your everyday museum world, whether you go into collections management or education or public programming or wherever it is. And the final section is just an appendix with any references that you use. So you can use whatever citation style you like, MLA or APA, whatever works for you, and just be consistent in what you do. And don't panic if you don't have a lot of references, or even you should have some references, but don't panic if you don't have a lot. This isn't a research paper. This is a thinking paper. This is or not paper, a thinking assignment. So and you change your voice a few times throughout it. So I think it's funny because it's not funny, it's fun. Kind of keeps you on your toes. So the grade breakdown for this is your formal reply to the borrower is 7.5 out of 30. Your RACI chart is also 7.5 out of 30. Your loan agreement clauses are 7.5 out of 30, and your memo to the board is 7.5 out of 30. So that is it. So everything is weighted equally. And I've got here just some resources that you can use to help you in the assignment. So the 5 objects that you can choose from are, and this is a real, no museum would ask for these, like, well, I can't say no museum would ask for these, but it's a really strange mix of objects. So you don't have to come up with a reason why you're choosing these 2. You can, you can talk about, whatever it is, why you chose the 2, but you really don't have to do any curatorial research on that. So you've got a painting from 1927, a photograph from 2007, an indigenous potlatch face mask, an extinct dodo skeleton, and an ivory horn. And I've put, these are real objects, and I've put a link to where I found them. So if you're, well, I'll give you a hint. Your loan agreement will, I'm actually giving you an answer here. Your loan agreement will include a list, and that list does include basically this kind of information, just a brief catalog description. So again, I don't expect you to go to, Paris to measure the, to measure the Mona Lisa itself, or to go to the ROM to measure the dodo skeleton, but take your dimensions and anything like that from any of the links or any other research that you find. Like if you do other research on the Oliphant, for example, you're looking at the Aga Khan Museum website, it leads you to the book, it takes you to another link. That's fine. Just make sure you cite all of that. And also just make sure you're using the same, for consistency, use the same units of measurement, that kind of thing. Like I want this to be polished. So here's the loan letter. So this is from the Museum of Home in Beijing, has sent this letter, what it is they're looking for, some of the dates, some of the ideas they have for programming. They talk a little bit about who their sponsor of the show is. So you have to do a formal response to this letter. And there's certain things that you need to address. And I've covered all of that in the rubric for this. And then there's just the list again. So the rubric for this assignment, loan rubric. So this is on eCentennial now. So you can just take a look at this and determine, write your own list or write your own reply. So that's this assignment in a nutshell. So those are the 2 that you can choose, one or the other. And positions are loan. Okay, so the test is, like I said, it's open book. You'll have like a week to write it. So I'll open the test at the beginning of the week. And then anytime over the course of that week, you'll be given, I think it's an hour and a half, maybe it's 2 hours to write the test. Once you start it, you have to complete it. Like, I don't think you can, but you can't go back. So make sure you've got 2 hours dedicated to doing it. Most people finish it in much less than 2 hours. And so again, this supports the adage that it's not knowing the answers, it's knowing where to find the answers. That's important. So it will help you, inspire you and motivate you to keep good notes, to keep organized notes, to download or to at least make accessible all of the references that are shared with you, either through me or here's a hint. The group presentations, I take at least one question from each group presentation or inspired by each group presentation. So make sure that you take all of those briefing notes. The questions will never be something that you can't find on some of the written documentation. And that documentation could be my PowerPoint slides, or it could be the briefing note from one of the group presentations, or it could be from one of the readings. That said, I will endeavor not to put anything from a reading from the textbook only. So anything that is in the textbook will be found somewhere else. Although that said, please buy the textbook. But academically, you won't be penalized if you don't. So it's an interesting test. It's like short answer, multiple choice, put things in the right order. It's a typical sort of online test. I'm going to give you the heads up now, and I will remind you again. I have tried to come up with every variation of spelling or abbreviation or answer, but I always have to go through manually each test and grade everything. So if you go through, please don't panic that, because you'll be given your grade right at the end of the test. The computer will grade you. I almost always have to increase people's grade. Your grade will never go down, it will only go up. And I will go through and grade them all, and I think you get notified after I've done it. I'll certainly announce in class once I've gone through all 37 of them to update. And it's just a funny thing with the way the acronyms and spelling and capitalization. Every year I add more variations, but anyway, so there that is. And the final assignment. Okay, we've come to the final assignment, which is the critical reflection. Okay, so there is, again, this is already on eCentennial. This is due on December 13th, which is the last day of class. You'll have up till 11:59 p.m. on the last day of class to do it. And I just make this on the Friday because I have to get my grades in like early the next week. And at this point, I'm actually going to be in New Zealand. So I'm going to have to be turning those responses around, or my grades around, and getting them submitted like early the next week with this like 16-hour time difference. And anyway, I don't want to take any chances on anyone's grades. So please get them to me by midnight on Friday, the last day of class. So I'm not going to read the whole purpose and stuff of this assignment. So do read it so you can understand what the purpose is. And again, it's a different kind of writing style. So throughout this course, throughout these assignments, you've had a variety of different ways of communicating your ideas that are all fairly typical of something that you would find in the museum world. So for this paper, I want you to identify a topic which is evolving, changing, or emerging as a critical issue as you embark on your career. This is an opportunity for you to discuss things that we've touched on in class. It could be anything from representation, voice, identity,
repatriation, restitution, climate change, funding, globalization, nationalism, relevance, digital, Me Too movement, global health crises. I mean, these are just some suggestions of things that people have done in the past. I want you to think about this as how the Museum of Tomorrow is going to look different than the Museum of Yesterday. You can look at this as, my God, what did the Gen Xers do? We have to fix this. Um, you can take a lot of different approaches with this. This is not a formal essay. So I think it's, what have I said? 800 words, 500 words, 2 to 3 pages. It's formal in that, it has to be spelling and grammar. Please don't use chat abbreviations or emojis or whatever. Write it in proper formatted English. Citations where citations are required. But again, it's not the kind of paper that requires citations necessarily. Depends what you're talking about. But it's just really personal. It's a reflection. It's in some ways, it's the corollary to the paper or the video that you did right at the very beginning, where you come into the museum world and you say, this is going to be great, and this is what I wanted. And then this is after a whole semester, you can look back and say, okay, that's what I want to do. This is how I'm going to get there. Now, that said about this is how I'm going to get there, you don't have to come up with a roadmap. You're not here to solve any issues. This is just a way of, identifying things, because not everything is perfect. The museum world is a really, really cool place to work. But there are lots of things we can do to improve it. And taking some of that lens that we talked about in that first video, you can apply that to this, and that will inform the kind of critical issue that you come up with for your assignment. What have I said? If you don't think there are any critical issues, like if you think the museum world is perfect, then write about positive aspects of the status quo. But I assure you, you will find something that needs to be changed, because nothing is perfect. But I'm giving you an option. So ideally, your paper will be a critical issue of collections management. But if really it does not float your boat, you just don't care about collections, you are just all about education or programming or conservation or mount making, then conservation is education. Anyway, if you're into another aspect, if you were all about visitor experience, and just out of necessity, you have to think everything is great because you're trying to court these visitors, then that's fine. Just write about anything that makes you passionate, that you're passionate about. Yeah, so I think this is a really fun paper. It might be a little bit cathartic for you. It can be a rant if you like, if you're really that passionate about something. As I say, this is not the formal, document that you were writing for your loans assignment, or anything, or a policy document that you did for your acquisitions assignment. This is just you. This is write it from your gut, write it from your heart. That's what I want to see, because what makes museums so exciting is the passion that the staff and visitors bring to it. So I want to see that passion. That's what this assignment is about. So, and even though, so I'm going to stop sharing. I'm going to stop share. So even though this is weird, sorry about these weird lighting situation. Okay, so even though I've gone through all of these assignments, I just addressed questions that routinely used to come up. It doesn't mean I will not answer any other questions about the assignments. I, of course, will. And I encourage you to read the assignment sheet in its full entirety, and that you look at the rubric as well, which will help guide you. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out. I will be hosting office hours. Because of the deinstall schedule right now, I'm not sure. Ideally, I will do the last hour of our class time next week as an office hour, but I'll certainly make myself available. Please just email me. My contact information is on the
overview in East Centennial, or honestly, you can just get it through the college. A number of you have already written to me. Although I'm not there, I want you guys to know I'm really present. I'm really interested and happy and excited. That's that passion to get to meet you all in person in 2 weeks, middle of September, and to really just start moving through some of these collections management issues and topics. And I'm really excited to introduce you to some of my colleagues who are tops in their field. So you're going to get an opportunity to start building your connections and your network. And networking is one of those things that you really should take advantage of now. You're going to meet a lot of people through your instructors and through field work, field trips, and that kind of thing, as well as each other. You are your own first rung of the network, web. Wow, I'm mixing my metaphors all over, but you are the first. You guys know what I mean. And then your instructors are that next level of networking, and then people that we bring in. So do feel comfortable to take down names and contact information for any of the guest speakers. If they offer their contact information, or if they say, reach out, do it. Absolutely do it. So that is all I have to say for today. Hopefully that is a good overview of the assignments, and that answered most of your questions. And closer to due dates, we can revisit some conversations. Hopefully my voice will be back to normal by then. And anyway, in the meantime, I look forward to seeing you all, and take care, and I'll see you all soon. Bye.